Today we're going to talk about our last lesson in chapter 3, which talks about using a budget. So we're going to be comparing our budgeted items that we planned on spending to what we actually spent during the month. So let's talk about a few vocabulary words, which our first one is expense summary, and that is a report that compares the amount you have spent to the amount you have actually budgeted. And then we need to talk about having an emergency fund. So, an emergency fund is extra money set aside to be used for unpredictable expenses such as medical, home, or vehicle repairs. So, you might have heard people talk about being in the black or being in the red when they've done their budget. A lot of companies use those terms, but we can use those terms for our households as well. Being in the black means that whatever you budgeted and what you spent, you didn't spend more than what you had budgeted for an item or for your entire budget. That keeps you safely in the black. But when we talk about being in the red is that you have spent more than your budgeted item or items in your list, and now you may or may not have enough money to pay those expenses at the end of the month. All right, so for our first example here, it says Zoe Smith prepared her budget for 2016. She had allotted herself $250 each month for her groceries. In October, she spent $265.89. How much more or less did she spend in October on groceries than her budget? So when we look at the math on this, she had allotted herself $250, but she actually spent $265.89. When we subtract those items, we end up having a negative total, which means that she actually spent more than she budgeted, which for that line item puts her over budget. Now, it doesn't mean her overall budget she was over, but for that line over, we would consider her in the red. Okay, on page 164, you have a couple more practice problems that look a lot like this. Take a second and pause the video and try the 2 concept checks on the bottom of that page. All right, so after you've completed the concept checks, when I look at the first one, Zoe and Doug budgeted $167.80, but they spent $158.90 in their budget. So that kept them in the black, and they were at $8.90. They were under budget. For the second concept check, Millie budgeted $647.50, but she spent a total of $671.92, bringing her to a negative balance or a negative total of $24.92, putting her over budget, or she would be considered in the red. Now, when we talk about those emergency funds, the emergency funds are good for you if you have set money away for certain situations, that maybe your car broke down and you had a flat tire and you had to get new tires unexpectedly. You can refer to your emergency fund to take money out for new tires. So maybe you had a car problem. Maybe in your home, your refrigerator broke, and at the last minute, you needed to dip into your emergency fund for household items so you're not over budget. Maybe your daughter broke her foot and you had to take her to the emergency room and you had to pay co-pays that your insurance didn't pay for. You might have had to pay money for crutches or x-rays, so some kind of medical items. So you always want to keep that emergency fund so that it keeps your total budget in the black and you don't have to use credit cards or dip into money that you don't have to then pay your household expenses for the month. So you should always keep yourself a nice savings account for emergencies to keep yourself on budget. All right, this concludes chapter 3. So I'm going to give you some problems to try and we'll discuss them tomorrow. I hope you have a great day.